Hello, I'm Rick McKinney. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here with you folks down here in Southern Pines. Like Dougal said, I got a home group. It's the Fellowship Group in Reidsville, North Carolina. It was established in 1947 by a man named Bob Montgomery. My sobriety date is November 22nd, 2016, and I got a sponsor and all that other good stuff. But anyways, like I said, I'm from Reidsville, North Carolina, and I got two, good parents. I've got a father who was a combat veteran in Vietnam, but he's also an alcoholic. I gave him his 26-year chip this past November, and he gave me mine. But I guess he's some kind of psychic too, because he knew I was alcoholic before I did. I don't know what that's all about. But my mom is such a saint. I mean, I can't blame anything I did on either one of them. But I was born February 20th, 1989, and I became an alcoholic right about 9 months before that date. I had a good upbringing, friends on the street, neighborhood, riding bikes around, all that good stuff. Anyways, the real action started when I was about 13. I had a friend of mine named Hutch call me up and said that he had gotten a hold of a six-pack of beer and he wanted to go out on the golf course and drink it. And I said, that sounds perfect. And we went out there to the tee box and we split it 3 and 3. And I didn't get anywhere close to being drunk, but I sure acted like it. I was laughing louder, I love you, man, pushing each other. Because I'd seen it on TV, I'd seen it in movies, I wanted to do that, but I loved everything about it except for the taste. I mean, we had a good time, we finished the beers, we walked home, no trouble. One other thing that happened when I was 13 is I was starting to get into, drinking 2-3 beers on the weekend, that kind of thing was no big deal, 13 years old, but I got into some trouble. My mom called me, we were doing something we weren't supposed to be doing, and she had a friend who was on the police force, and she called him and told him, not to get us into any real trouble, she just wanted him to come talk to us, and kind of scare us a little bit. And boy, I was 13, but I was mad at her. I tell you what, I was straightforward with her. I said, you listen here, Mom, I'm going to let you take me to school and buy everything I need and feed me, but other than that, we're done. That's it. And luckily, I got over that resentment. We're close now. I love my mother. But just that kind of stuff started early. And when I was 14, I wasn't driving yet. I didn't have my permit, but when I was 14, that same friend of mine called me up and said he had some liquor. And he had it in his basement. We were going to go over there and drink it. And I was excited, but I had no clue that stuff was made by Satan himself. It was Bacardi 151, 151 proof. And he had it sitting there in the middle of the coffee table, and the light was shining on it like the Holy Grail. And we all got down there, 14, 15 years old, and we lined up some shots, and we all took it. We made the face, did all that. And then they started playing video games, and they started doing other stuff. And I was sitting there looking at that bottle and looking at them, and I was ready to go. And my friend said, you have as much of that as you want. I mean, I ain't going to finish it by myself. You drink whatever you want. And I tried to finish it. I took shot after shot of that 151, and the rest of the details of that evening are alleged because I don't remember them. I've just been told. But my friend, he had his permit. He had to be home by 9, and he took me to my house and drug me up to the front door and laid me down, rang the doorbell. And he ran back to the car, and when my mom came, he said, something's wrong, Rick, see you later, and hopped in and drove off. Anyways, I prayed to the porcelain god that evening, and I think my mom took a picture of me laying there. I don't know, but I thought it was great. I had a good time, and I reckon it's just like somebody with a peanut allergy. They eat peanuts, that happens. I drank, and that's what happened. I ended up throwing up all over the place and sick, and couldn't wait to do it again. Y'all know what I mean. But that kind of stuff just kept happening, and high school, that's the kind of thing, and I wasn't too concerned with school, nothing like that. But I wasn't. we were getting into trouble and all that, but me and my friends, we weren't failures. I just didn't, really put myself out there. I mean, before I was 18, I was student body president of my high school. I got my Eagle Scout, and I also got my pilot's license before I was even 18 years old. But when I was 18, before I turned 18, one of my friends had a party, and we were all over there, and we had been drinking, and just a huge shock. We all wanted fast food about 1 in the morning. And so we piled into this guy's car, and he took off. And just as soon as we got out of the driveway, the police pulled us over. They had heard us party, and they were just waiting for somebody to leave. And that kid got out, and he sang like a canary. He told us we were all drunk and underage, all that. And so we all got underage drinking tickets, and that was the first of many times that I had to do court-ordered community service. I don't know if y'all ever done any of that. I did so much court-ordered community service, my grandma used to brag to people about her grandson volunteering down at the Red Cross. I remember one time I was doing court-ordered community service at the YMCA at Christmas, doing Christmas trees, and the mayor came up with a big group of people, and I was in Scouts with his son, and he just stopped everybody. He said, "Look at this fine young man here doing, volunteer." And I just kind of, "Hey, well, I'm doing what I can, Jay, just hanging in there, But it was, we had a good time, all kinds of fake IDs, all that stuff. But just a huge shocker when it came time to go to school. I didn't get in where I wanted to. I didn't take school seriously. Didn't get in where I wanted to. But I had a friend of a friend who knew somebody, and I weaseled my way in. So you can't touch me. I'm still untouchable. No consequences. And so that's what I did. I took off to Wilmington, North Carolina to go to the university there. And I hear UNCW has a nice campus, but I didn't see it much. I've read about it, but I wasn't there too often. I was out at the beach or something. And I found a fraternity while I was down there, and that was just a wild ride. And I lasted about 2 years there. And it started off fun, It's living down there on my own, just like, letting the bow and arrow out. I was gone. And it started off fun, and slowly but surely, I started to distance myself from people. I started to kind of get into that trouble, and I was just becoming a wreck. And I don't know about y'all, but I upset my roommates. I lived with them for a while, and they were kind of sick of me. I'd come in late, break their stuff, steal their stuff. And I remember one night I had a half gallon of gin that I was drinking by myself, and I was close to being halfway done. And they were just eyeing me, just staring at me, looking at me funny. And I was like, "Well, y'all look like y'all ready to do something." I said, "Why don't you go ahead and do it? Why don't you just go ahead and do something?" And boy, did they. They hopped on me, and they let me have it. They beat the snot out of me. And I found out years later when I was getting my wisdom teeth out that they had broken my jaw pretty bad. I mean, they really let me have it. And I called everybody crying and cussing. And my dad came and got me, and he moved me to the outskirts of town. He found me some roommates and moved me to the outskirts of town. And just, if you can get me away from my friends, I'll calm down. I'll start acting right. And I didn't. If I'm out there, I just figured I'd just drink at the house now, And slowly, and my friends didn't want to come visit me out there. Nobody was willing to drive out there to see me. And so I was just out there just drinking and carrying on. And there was about a 2 or 3 week period where none of my family could get a hold of me. Nobody knew what I was up to. And eventually they just pulled the plug. They said, "Yeah, I don't know what's going on here, but you're done." And I remember my dad came to get me one morning. He got there about 8 a.m. and I was rail thin. I was sleeping on the couch because somebody had peed in my bed. I don't know what that was about. But he got all my furniture and everything, and he said, I really don't care what you do, but all your stuff's coming back to Reidsville. And so once I sobered up and all that good stuff, that's what I did too. I headed on home. And my father started a business in 1981, and I had grew up kind of working with him, and so that's what I did when I was back home. I worked with him. And he's alcoholic, so he knew what was going on. So you can imagine we butted heads a little bit. You hear about the geographical cure. Moving back to Reidsville slowed me down a little bit, but it didn't break me or anything. I was still getting into trouble. But living at home, I was kind of pulling my act together. I got into community college there, and started doing better in school. But I was still partying. And one night, a friend of mine called me, and he was living in Greensboro, just about 20 miles up the road. And he said that he was going to a house party and I ought to join him. And I said, I sure will. So I went over there, and I remember this guy was in the military, and he had this scorpion mezcal. It's like mezcal. Instead of the worm, it had a scorpion at the bottom. He said, y'all finish this, I'll eat that scorpion. And I said, well, you just don't know who you're talking to. That's no problem. Which 1/5? That's not. So we watched him eat that, and he said, all right. And he pulled out that absinthe that's illegal in America. He got it from Germany when he was stationed there. He said, well, let's try this. And I found that out that evening, you ain't even got to wait for that sugar cube to burn. You can just go ahead and take shots of that stuff. It don't even matter. And that's what I did. The next thing I know, I'm doing the sobriety walk down the side of the road, been pulled over, DUI. Got arrested that evening, and my mom had to come pick me up about 7 in the morning. I was a real jerk to police officers. I don't know about y'all, but I ended up refusing to blow, which is, I don't know who I'm trying to save there or what I'm doing, but I was just being a jerk, carrying on with them, and I refused to blow, so that's automatic year, But while this was all going on, I finished up at community college, and I don't know why my parents thought I would do fine going somewhere else to school, but they wanted me to finish, so they were going to support my education. So I started applying again and ended up going to Boone, North Carolina, Appalachian down there, and that's a great place for an alcoholic, Boone. And I got into restaurant business there, and I mean, that's phenomenal for an alcoholic. You show up about 4 p.m. and leave with cash. You can't beat that. So that's what I did there, and it was just back to the races once I got down there. And I was walking all over the place with that DUI and just carrying on. If I ain't got to drive, I can drink as much as I want to. And just that kind of mess. And I'll never forget one day I came back from class, and there was a little, one of those, like, you got a letter at the post office or whatever, come pick it up. And I got a ride over there. I couldn't drive, and so I got a ride up there, and it was a letter from the FAA telling me to send in my license and my medical, that my privileges to fly had been stripped. And so that was kind of my thing, and that really hurt my ego. I remember I still even recently sometimes I'll lie about what happened to that pilot's license. It really hurt my ego, but I didn't tell anybody what happened, and it didn't slow me down at all. I mean, that kind of thing doesn't really matter in the moment. But just one of those things that drinking does. I mean, just that kind of mess. And anyways, I kept that gig going and kind of fumbled my way through school. Same kind of stuff, getting into fights, carrying on. Nothing changed. And I remember once the time came up where I graduated, my parents were like, well, what now? And I had a friend who had a real estate firm in Banner Elk. I was like, well, I'm going to do real estate. Just made it up off the top of my head. And they're like, oh, good. And so I took that class, and I remember the first day I went to that class, I had to wear dark-rimmed glasses to hide my black eye, that's a good sign. But did that deal, and thought I was going to do that for a career, and passed the course, but then just big surprise, got hammered drunk the night before the state exam and failed it, and didn't care enough to try again. I think I was off by like 11 questions and didn't care less about it. I thought it was kind of funny at the time. But that didn't pan out, and my family heard about that, and so they started kind of making decisions about me coming home again to try to do the business thing. And so I tried that, and the thing about it is I had graduated college. That real estate thing kind of didn't pan out, and I remember thinking it's time for me to kind of straighten up. You know, I'm ready to start moving towards this adulthood thing, and I really wanted to try, and I really wanted to do well, but that just wasn't the case. I'd still come into work drunk as ever, not hungover, still drunk. And my dad, he could smell it from the door, and he wouldn't say a word. He would just do his hand like that, just get out. And I'd drive home that morning, you know, drunk. I remember one time I fell out of the shower after he kicked me out. But and I just could not get it. I couldn't. Week after week, I'd come in drunk, and I just didn't understand why. I wanted to do better. I was trying to hide it. I didn't once think it was a problem. I mean, I never once considered it, you know, my drinking to be a problem. I just couldn't understand why I couldn't straighten out. I mean, you know, I didn't blame alcohol ever. I just blamed me. And the arguments were severe. We were just back and forth, on, and finally it just came to a head. And I said, screw it. And I chose to go back to Blowing Rock to wash dishes instead of staying there and trying to take over that business. It wasn't the most financially sound decision I've ever made, but that's what I did, is went to wash dishes again. And so I moved back up there, and I don't have school. I don't have a real job. I'm working at that restaurant. I don't have any goals. It's on. I mean, it's time to rock and roll. I was no stranger to being kicked out of bars at 2:15 in the morning, you know, but the restaurant weekend is Tuesday, Wednesday, and I was getting kicked out of bars at 2 p.m. I mean, just the middle of the day walking home. One time I woke up and there was blood all over the sheets and everything, and I didn't have a clue what happened. Didn't really care, to be honest with you. And found out months later that somebody watched me walk off a 4-foot brick wall and just land, and they thought I was dead till I got up and walked off. And just that kind of stuff, just crazy nonsense. And I remember one night, it was in September of 2016. I had made one of the, I don't know about y'all, but I used to kind of make deals with myself about drinking. I'm going to take a week off. I'm going to just do beer. Drink on the weekends, whatever. But I'd done one of those 30-day deals. I guess it was gotten rough, so I was going to take 30 days to dry out. And I was coming home from work, clocked out of the restaurant, and went to Taco Bell, the drive-thru. I was going to go home and watch a movie or something. And they asked me what I wanted, and I remember sitting there, and I said, "Are you really going to go home and get fat and watch TV?" And I said, "Never mind." And I went straight to the bar, and I saddled up at the bar beside some stranger, and I said, "You want a shot, buddy?" And he said, "Yeah, I do." And so me and him just back and forth, buying each other shots. I had never met him before. Couldn't pick him out of a lineup today. And he got to talking about he was going somewhere, and I said, "Well, I don't really know if I can drive." He said, "Hop in with me, I'll drive." And so we took off, no telling what I did or where we went, who knows. But the next thing I remember is I woke up in my truck upside down with the windshield busted out. And no real physical damage. I had a bruise down the side of my back and down my thigh. And I mean, I didn't have a clue where I was. I had flipped the Cadillac Escalade that my stepmom had before she passed away. And I climbed out of that thing, climbed out of the windshield, you know, trying to figure out where I am. Walked down to a convenience store and tried to call my friends, but, you know, nobody wanted to pick up Rick's phone call at 3 in the morning, you know. When the first time they'd seen that, they knew what kind of junk I brought with me. And I remember I just got a drink or something and just tried to dry out for a minute and walked outside, and the cops were all over the place. I kind of flagged one of them down. I said, "I bet it's me you're looking for. I'm not sure, but I got to guess." And so he picked me up, and I was cooperative. I mean, my truck's sitting there upside down, and I didn't give him any problems. I remember that night, he let me ride up front. He didn't even throw the cuffs on me. He was talking to me like just sitting here today, and it was my second DUI. I remember I got $800 for that Escalade. It was $800 and the junkyard wanted $5, so I walked with $300 for that thing. And do you think that stopped me from drinking? No, sir. No. It sped me up. I didn't have to drive. I didn't. That was really the only thing I had worth anything. Now that was gone. I was worse than ever. I remember I would black out way sooner than I used to. 6, 7 beers or a half-fifth just black me out, clear blackout. I was vomiting a lot more than usual, and it was always black. It was just straight black, and I didn't even think twice about it. Just flush it down and keep going or whatever, and just a mess. And I remember November 22nd, 2016. I woke up. My mom and sister were coming to visit me for Thanksgiving, and they were going to be there at noon. And I remember I had to set my alarm, so I made sure I was up by noon. And I got up, and I remember looking in the mirror, and I had a black eye. I had a vein busted in the middle of my head where somebody had choked me out, and I had all these marks all over my head where somebody had beat me with one of those daggone handheld vacuum cleaners. And I remember I was looking in the mirror, and I thought, I wonder if they're going to notice, And so anyways, I kind of tried to clean myself up, and just when they got there, I stood outside waiting for them, and the first thing out of my sister's mouth was, "Where's your truck?" And I said, "Well, let's not get too hasty here. Why don't y'all come inside? We'll figure out where we're going to eat lunch, And she said, "Where's your truck?" I said, "Look, y'all just got here. Why don't we say our hellos and, kind of." And she asked me a third time, "Where's your truck?" And I looked at both of them and I said, "I was in a blackout. I flipped it. I totaled it. I could have died. I'm lucky to be alive. And I got my second DUI." And the way that they looked at me with just such horror and such shame and such fear, I don't know what to tell y'all today, but the only thing I know to describe it is that God reached down and pulled some kind of cord, flipped some switch in me. In that single moment, I was able to see what I had become, what alcohol was doing to me, and how I had accomplished nothing in my life. The big book describes it just perfectly what happened. It says here in We Agnostics, "In a few seconds he was overwhelmed by the conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore." And I didn't tell them. I didn't tell them right then and there that I was going to quit drinking. But I knew I was done. I knew right there, standing in that driveway, that I was done. And we went out to lunch that day. And I remember that night I clocked in at the restaurant, and I went in, and my buddy said, "Did you tell your parents what happened to your truck?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "The way they looked at me, I think is going to be the reason I never drink again." And I didn't go to AA meetings in Boone. I didn't particularly try to quit drinking. I just didn't. I went to the same parties. I hung out with the same people. I just didn't want it. I don't care for that. But me and my family kind of started talking again, which is funny how that happens. You quit drinking, you kind of. But we kind of started making plans for me to move back another time. So I I remember I told them, "Give me to the end of the year to get my affairs in order." Like I had anything. But they did, and the end of January, my dad came, got me, and he took me to my first meeting, February 2nd, 2017. He took me to the Summit Fellowship Club over in Greensboro. And we went in, and I remember there's an area where you get your coffee, you kind of shoot the breeze, whatever, and he knew everybody there, and I was just kind of hanging out. And I said, "Well, I'm going to go get a seat." And I walked around the corner, and there was this older guy sitting there, and he wasn't saying a word, but for some reason, he was the loudest person in the room. And I just couldn't quit looking at him or thinking about him, and I had no reason why. And that meeting started, and people started sharing here and there, and then he spoke up. And he started talking about things that I felt and that I thought for years, but had never heard anybody say. That guy was Wayne Stutz, and I asked him to be my sponsor that night, and he's still my sponsor. God put him there for a reason. I truly believe that. My first meeting. And he's taken me through so much. He had a business that he gave to his son, so he's been able to help me with that. He's just been the perfect sponsor, and I met him that first night. And he lit the pilot light in me. He got me fired up about AA. And with your second DUI, you get a choice. You either get 7 days treatment or 7 days jail. And I said, that's an easy choice. Jail, I've been there before. I know what that's all about. No biggie, I'll go on weekends. I can do that deal. But my sponsor and my dad kept talking about, I don't even know where they got it from, but they kept talking about this 28 days at Hope Valley. And I said, 28 days? They said 7. Can you not hear what I'm saying? Not 28, 7. And they said, well, we think you ought to do 28 days at Hope Valley in Dobson, North Carolina. And I said, well, that's the last thing I'm going to do. And so I got on the phone with my lawyer, and we were trying to figure out how I could get into this detox in Wilkesboro. And I had 8 days before my next court date. And I remember I was trying so hard to get a bed at this detox, and I was working everything out with work and this and that, and I'm calling everybody, and then just out of nowhere, I just stopped and had another huge surrender. And I said, this is not working. And so I did. I called Hope Valley, and I said, I need to come up there. And I went up to Hope Valley March 3rd, 2017, and did the 28-day program. And that's the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. They taught me so much about what I am and what I have. They said I had a 2-part disease, physical allergy and a mental obsession. They told me I wasn't a bad person trying to be good. I was a sick person trying to get well. These were things I never heard before. These were things I had never thought about. And I took it serious. I love Hope Valley. Whenever they ask me to do anything, I'm right there. Take speakers up there or come speak myself, whatever Hope Valley needs, anything. That place helped save my life for sure. But I got out March 31st, 2017, and I went up there and I got a daggone bachelor's degree in recovery. I came back down the mountain ready to teach y'all something. I had over 100 days sober, and I knew you couldn't tell me nothing. I'd share 3-4 times in a meeting. Whatever. Y'all need to hear what I got to say. And but I had a court date coming up for this DUI thing, April 13th, and after I got out of Hope Valley, I kept trying to call my lawyer almost every single day. I couldn't get him on the phone. He wouldn't call me back. And April 12th rolled around, and I remember my dad took me up. I had already been 6 months without a license. My dad carried me to the ATM to get my cash out, court costs and all that. And I called my lawyer, and the secretary answered. And I was rude with that lady. I got loud. I said some things that I regret. And I said, my court date is tomorrow. He needs to call me back. I don't know what's going on. This is nuts. I don't know why he hadn't gotten in touch with me. Well, about 45 minutes later, he called me back, and he said, Mr. McKinney? And I said, Mr. Teague? And he said, I'm sorry I've been out of touch. I said, yeah, I noticed that. And he said, well, I've got some interesting news for you about your case. And I said, well, what do you got? He said, that trooper that arrested you that evening had a little bit to drink one night and went up to cookout, hit the wall in the drive-thru, hit another driver in the drive-thru, fled the scene, led the Boone PD on a high-speed chase down 421, blew a .18. He's been arrested and all your charges are dropped. I hit the ground, I hit my knees, and I started bawling like a baby. And I was saying things. I said, apologize to your secretary for me. I said some nasty things. I'm sorry. Tell that's a sweet lady. I didn't mean to talk to her. I was crying. I was thanking him. I called my mom. I called my dad. I called the preacher. I called everybody. And that day, I made a commitment. Anything that AA or my church asked of me, I say yes. I'm right there if I can. And since that day, I began this beautiful journey of Alcoholics Anonymous. I began to listen. I wanted to hear what y'all had to say. I started going to meetings with Glenn and Dougal. I stayed in the middle though. I wasn't sharing every meeting, but I stayed right in the middle, and it's been just a wonderful experience. I've gotten to do all kinds of stuff I never dreamed. I help people. I give people rides that don't have licenses because I know all about that. All kinds of miraculous stuff has happened. One time, I flew out to Denver, Colorado. I was going to stay for a couple days, and first thing I did was find a meeting, and I took my luggage and everything to this meeting in Denver, and there was a group of people standing around, all that, talking, drinking coffee, and I said, "Is there a 7 o'clock meeting here?" They said, "Yeah, sure. We just got done with one. We're leaving, but the people will be back at 7." I said, "Okay," and I started hanging around. And 6:50 rolled around, nobody. 6:55 rolled around, nobody. And right before 7, a young guy walked in, and I said, "Oh, good, somebody's here to chair the meeting." He said, "I just quit drinking. I don't know anything about AA." And I said, "Well, I guess I'm going to chair this thing." And so I started a pot of coffee, because you can't have a meeting without coffee. And I gave him the steps, I read the traditions, and we sat there and talked about what he was going through. He told me he was tired of getting beat up and wrecking cars. And I said, "I'm your guy, man. I got you. I understand completely. I know all about that." And I just know that that's not a coincidence. That kind of stuff is just not a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. And I like going to these conventions. I go to Fellowship by the Sea every year. One year I heard this speaker, his name was Lyle. His story is actually in the big book. He was a commercial pilot that was drinking and flying, which is a lot different than drinking and washing dishes, but he got caught, and he lost his pilot's license. It was all over the news. And I walked up to him. I waited in line after he spoke, and I walked up to him, and I said, "I lost my pilot's license to a DUI." And he looked right at me, and he said, "You can get it back." And he handed me 2 business cards. He said, "Call me." I didn't think anything of it. I mean, this guy, in my mind, is like a celebrity. I mean, he was all over the news. His story's in the big book, But I was sitting around my office one day thinking about it, and I got to looking at his card, and I just said, "Screw it. I'm gonna give him a call." And he picked right up, and I didn't even halfway plan on picking up, but he did, and I said, I was kind of shocked. I heard you speak in Myrtle. It was a great job. But I told you that I had lost my license, and you told me to call you. And he said, "Yeah, sure. You got a pen and paper?" And that man stayed on the phone with me for over 45 minutes, telling me exactly, step by step, what I needed to do. And he told me that I had to find a particular kind of AME, an Airman Medical Examiner. And I looked it up online, and there's only one in the state of North Carolina. And he's a buddy of mine in AA. And I called him up. He's retired now, which is unfortunate. But he told me that there's a friend of his who he knows in Columbia, South Carolina. And I mean, there's no telling how old I'll be when I'm back flying. But I can already see God's got this lining people up through AA. Those kind of things aren't coincidences. And you know what? To be honest with you, I don't have to go to AA. And nobody has to go to AA. But I'll tell you why I go. Because I love it, and also because one night my mom and I were going to a restaurant in Reidsville called Mayberry's. And we pulled up, and there were police cars from Burlington, North Carolina, and they were parked all crazy. And, I'm thinking, well, I guess I've got to park a mile away and have to walk over here now. Thanks a lot. But we walk up around the corner, and there's these two cops out there, and they're talking to these two young boys. One of them sobbing his eyes out, and the other one's just standing there talking to him. And I'm sitting there thinking they got into some kind of trouble or something, got caught. And we go inside or whatever, and we're ordering. And I said, what's going on outside with those police officers? And they said those guys. One of those guys used to work there. He's 20. The other one's 17. Their mom died last night, and the cops came to Reidsville to find them and tell them before it hit the news. And I was like, wow, that's awful. But the next day, I found out what had happened. That mom had been at a bar drinking the night before, tried to walk home, fell down, drunk, and froze overnight. If she had found AA and worked this program, those two young men would have a very different life today. I guarantee that. And I don't know what happened, man. You know, I don't know why what happened. I don't know what, but I know I need it. Even if it's not for me that particular day, maybe it's to put my hand out there and shake the newcomer's hand. And beyond all that, I love AA. I've dedicated a lot of time reading about it. I've read several books about it. I even published one myself. It's a play, which y'all's friend Wallace was a part of. He was the speaker at the Founders Day event in Reidsville, and he was kind enough to come in and have fun with us in the play. He did an excellent job. I was telling him before, at the end of his lines after he read, he started freestyling, saying his own thing. It was better than anything I wrote. But and we had so much fun, I wrote another one. And we're going to have another Founders Day event June 9th in Reidsville, North Carolina. I hope to see y'all there. The speaker will be Roy H. out of High Point. And I tell you, it's a long road, but I'm up for the ride. And I hear people talking about fear of a relapse, fear of a slip. I don't have that. I have faith. I have faith that if I work this program and I ride the meetings with Glenn and Dougal, I'm not going to drink. I know that. I know that if I work this program, I don't have to worry about that. And it's been a real pleasure being up here with y'all, and I thank you for letting me do this, and I hope y'all have a good evening.